Hello. Um, so I've had a Zoom malfunction and I can't fix it because I'm not in a place where I have very good internet access. So I apologize for that. So what I've decided to do instead is do a quick recording to go over what I was going to do in the live session. And then when we meet next week, we can just work through this again in addition to what we'll start on for CBT next week. So today what I wanted to emphasize is two things. One, the dialectical aspect of DBT is the idea that the whole time that you're working with your clients, you're trying to help them embrace opposing beliefs or opposing thoughts. One, that you're trying to encourage them and direct them towards change. There's a heavy emphasis on abstinence, avoiding the substances that they struggle with for addiction. But there's also a heavy emphasis on acceptance. The idea that, yes, we want to encourage our clients to acquire sobriety and maintain sobriety, but that also we want them to accept. One second. Hiccups. We want them to accept that relapse is part of recovery. And we want them to get away from the idea that when they relapse, suddenly it's like it's all for nothing, it's over, why not just throw in the towel, give up, or, really make this relapse count. So the idea of accepting, kind of rolling with the punches, that relapse happens and that's okay, that there is, but also a heavy emphasis on pushing forward for change. And the second thing that I really wanted to emphasize is going back to the idea of validation. There is a heavy emphasis in DBT on the relationship, and a lot of time in the beginning is spent on developing a relationship with your clients. And we talked about the 7 different depths of validation and how the whole emphasis of that, the point of that is because it helps develop a greater sense of intimacy and connection with your client. In addition to that, the very first meeting, you'll actually have a discussion with your client about how an attachment, a relationship with a therapist can be difficult for clients in the beginning, and that sometimes it looks almost like they referenced it as a butterfly, like coming and going and coming and going, and you'll notice a lot of behaviors consistent with almost like avoidance or pulling back from you, not returning phone calls, not being available. So in the very first session, you will actually set up sort of a plan B, so that if for some reason you start to lose contact with your client, it's actually expected that you will in the beginning, that they give you a list of friends that may know where they are, places that they may frequent or go, ways to try to reach out with them. And you will spend a lot of time in the beginning essentially chasing down your clients, trying to re-engage them. That really the greatest component that generates change within your client is going to be that relationship. And so there's a lot of effort in DBT in order to establish the relationship through your physical behaviors in terms of, being transparent with them up front and letting them know that this is important, that they're likely going to pull back, and that's understandable, but that you recognize the connection, the relationship with you is important. Letting them know that you're going to do everything you can to continue to fight for that. And then the constant validation for your client to establish a sense of intimacy, continue that engagement, that normalizing that connection, that in doing those things, that the other stuff that you're working on will eventually start to kind of sink in and make sense, right? That even tell them all day long that, yes, it's good for you to be sober, and that these are the skills you can do to release your stress. These are the things you can do to minimize your distress. And these are the things you can do to avoid your triggers. But it means nothing. It really carries no true value unless you have that connection and trust, because that's when what you say has meaning and can carry importance and significance. So those were the two things that I really wanted to emphasize again, going back to the relationship, the idea that you're not just validating, you're also literally going to be tracking them down. And you're going to have a discussion with them on the very first session, just being mindful that this is all about the relationship aspect. And if you'll remember, I told you that all forms of substance use treatment are going to focus on one of three components. One would be relationships. One is going to be psychoeducation, and the other one is self-regulation. And in DBT, there's an overemphasis on relationships. Then it shifts into psychoeducation and self-regulation. So the skills that you teach your clients on how to manage their distress, that's both self-regulation and psychoeducation. We're talking about like the potential for their relationship to look more like a butterfly, that expect that this may be an issue and that you may start to kind of pull away from me, sort of thing. That's both psychoeducation, but an emphasis on the relationship again, right? All right, so if you have any questions, let me know. Feel free to reach out. I'm sorry that we weren't able to connect live and in person, but hopefully this will help some. And I will see you next week at 6 p.m. Thanks.